What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Happy Friday. Hope you guys are doing well. We have made it to the end of the week, and we are a handful of days away from the NFL trade deadline. And I've got at least one more video in me discussing this upcoming deadline, one more team that I want to spend some time on, one more roster to take a look at to see if there's anything the Seahawks might want to have. We're talking about the Las Vegas Raiders. They are the last team that I think is likely to be a trade deadline seller, or at the very least, should be a trade deadline seller given the situation that that team finds themselves in. Looking at some of the teams that we haven't talked about yet, I don't think the Ravens really make sense as a seller anymore. After they won last night, I think they got to kind of roll with it. Maybe the Bengals if they lose on Sunday, but as of right now, they seem pretty content. So it's all about the Raiders. Be right back. All right, guys, let's take a minute so I can tell you about Sleeper, a one-stop shop for all your sports needs. You can celebrate and chat on sports games in real time with other users. You can get the fastest scores, blazing fast sports news and sports alerts right at your fingertips. And of course, you can use Sleeper to play in fantasy leagues and win real money on picks contests. This is the way sports were meant to be enjoyed together. So download Sleeper today. Use promo code SBN to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. And you can pair that with another promo they have right now where you can get a $20 entry free with no deposit required. So get both of those things going. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 25 states and growing. So check out Sleeper today, get to it, and go have some fun with sports this year. All right, so let's talk a little bit about these Raiders, and that'll probably do it in terms of like the team-wide looks at trade stuff. Obviously, if the Seahawks make a trade, I'll talk about that. And there might be some players on teams that you might want to look at without necessarily assuming that the team that would be trading them is a seller. Like what we saw with the Patriots over the last few days, where obviously the Patriots are not they're not selling at the trade deadline, but they did trade off a couple players that they didn't really want. So there is stuff like that happening out there. But in terms of the teams that you really should be hammering, trying to find guys that you want, I think the Raiders are pretty much at the end of the line, especially in the modern NFL, where every team feels like they're just one good offseason away, and you really have to push a team to get them to admit that they're a ways away. Okay, so there's not a lot on this Raiders team that I think is worth coveting. We'll start with Jacoby Myers because we know that he wants a trade, and it doesn't seem like the Raiders are that interested in keeping him around past this season. He's about to turn 29. He's coming off the best season of his career, 1,000-yard season. He was pretty productive in years prior to that, by the way. It's not like this was a no-name before his 1,000-yard season. He gave you 700, 800-yard seasons on two different teams, multiple quarterbacks. He worked with, what, Cam Newton, Mac Jones, a little bit of, I don't know if he intersected with Derek Carr in Vegas, but I think that he did for at least one season. So this guy's been a good player for a while. Last year was kind of his breakout. So far this year, he's been injured. He's missed some games, not having the big season that some people were anticipating in Chip Kelly's offense. So we know this goes back to before the season started. He wants a trade and he wants a new contract. So I don't really want to do this, but I do think it's one of those things that you have to look at if you do want to add another receiver to this team, which I am I'm certainly amenable to it, but I want to make sure I'm adding the right guy. I don't know if Jacoby Myers is the right guy. He's been in this league a while. We know he's not like a star. We know. At this point, if he was a star, I think we would have seen something a little bit more from him, but hasn't really happened yet. So to me, he's just a good player. And if he wants 20 million a year, like I mean, remember the contract expires at the end of this season, right? So if you trade for him, you're going to have to either immediately extend him or extend him at the end of the year. So you are going to have to make a commitment here pretty quickly. And I mean, he is going to turn, like I said, what, 29? Yeah, 29 in just about a week here. It's um, it's definitely something that you have to feel really good about to be willing to do. And I imagine he's going to want at least 20 million a year. He's coming off the best year of his career. He's been a consistently solid receiver in this league for a while now. Now, if you trade for him, you're going to inherit what? You're looking at like $6 million for the rest of the season approximately, right? Because he's already been paid a chunk of his base salary from the Raiders. And of course, he's got his signing bonus from the Raiders. We don't have to worry about that. And obviously, the Raiders take on the void years, but you're still talking about inheriting, what, $6 million against your cap this year. That is significant. And then you're probably going to have to extend him beyond this year. Because I don't think this is going to be some super cheap trade. I think it's going to be a reasonable trade. I think you're talking about like maybe you could get lucky and get him for like a 5th round pick because he's probably gone at the end of the year anyway. And that would be something that you could do without having to commit to him. But if you give up a 4th round pick or more, which is possible, I guess, then you have to extend him. You're pretty much married to him at that point, or at least it'll feel like it. It'll feel like a big mistake if you give up that kind of an asset for a guy you only have for half a season. So I do think that there are some concerns here. I do think that this is something that I would rather stay away from. But if you're one of the Seahawks fans that really wants to add a receiver, this is going to be one of your best options. And he's not going to be one of the most expensive receivers in the league. We live in a world where receivers are going to be costing 40 million a year pretty routinely now. Now that Ja'Marr Chase has broken the ceiling, a lot of these guys, they're going to cost probably around 40 million a year. There might be one or two every offseason going forward. So if you can get Jakobi Meyers on an extension for 20 million, you're doing okay. But I still don't know if I want to do it. I still don't know if that's a good idea, especially with this team. If we keep Kubiak going forward, we are probably going to be a receiver light team. And I don't know if you want to be adding this kind of expenditure. Given that, I'm on the fence when it comes to this kind of stuff, when it comes to the receiver position. But it's certainly something to consider. All right, so that's Jakobi Meyers. The other guy on offense for this Raiders team that is worth talking about is JPJ. We've talked about him before, Jackson Powers-Johnson. He's played 3 different positions for this Raiders team, and he's been at least decent at all of them. So far this year, he's been a pure right guard. He's played every snap at right guard, and he's actually been okay. You go back to his rookie year, which was last year. He played a bunch at left guard, a bunch at center, and a tiny bit at right guard, and he was pretty okay. Not great, but capable. Had problems, but he was 21 last year. Let's keep in mind, that was a young rookie. He is still younger than a lot of players that are going to get drafted in April. So it's not like the youth is a big thing here. And I believe that he will benefit a lot if you play him at his natural position, which is center. If you move JPJ to center, then I think you're going to get better results. So there is an anticipated boost from that. He's not a great scheme fit. He's a little top heavy. He doesn't move that well. But I think the upgrade in ability is still too significant. He is so much better than Jalen Sundle. I think it overwrites or overrules the issue that you may have with the fit in the offense. You can work around that. You can't really work around just being a bad player. And I don't know if Jalen Sundle's a bad player, but he's close enough to where I think you got to be open to this. Obviously, he's still on the rookie deal. So you're not talking about a big cap hit on trading for him. You trade for him, the Raiders are on the hook for his signing bonus, which is what, 800,000 next year and 800,000 the year after. The base salary for the rest of this year is going to be like 650,000. You inherit 1.6 million next year, 2 million the year after. It's pretty insignificant. The cap hits are not very big. So no issues there really. That's fine. That's going to be okay. And I mean, it's kind of like you're getting another. It's kind of like you're getting another rookie. This is not a guy you're going to have to think about extending for at least a year and a half, maybe more, depending on how he plays. This is not a guy who's been so good so far that he's definitely going to get that early contract extension. So I think that I think that you could justify giving up a lot here if you like the player. And again, it's not perfect, but right now, perfect is not something we need to be trying for when what we have isn't even really defensively average. Like we're clearly below average at these positions. And I think that the upgrade in talent could override some of the imperfect fit stuff. And the fact that you may not have to extend this guy for another 2.5 years is also very, very important. So, JPJ, I imagine you're going to have to give up at least a fourth round pick here, maybe a third. I don't think you're going to have to push it up to a second. It's not like this guy's lighting the world on fire, but I could see the Raiders demanding a third round pick for him because he has been pretty good and he's going to be cheap for another 2.5 years. If you can spin it to a fourth round pick or something like that, great. Would you be willing to give up a pick like that for a guy like JPJ? I think I would. I know the third round pick would hurt. I know that's a big deal, but JPJ was a guy I valued as being a late first rounder, and he's only 22. This is a young player that you could build around on a cheap deal for the next couple years and possibly on a bigger deal afterwards. So I would definitely be willing to give up the assets required to get JPJ. So interested, for sure. Would love to make this happen. I think he would immediately upgrade our offensive line, even with the imperfect fit. Okay, that's it for the offense. There are two guys on defense I want to talk about. First guy's Max Crosby. And for a lot of this season, I have been operating under the assumption that Max Crosby was relatively untradeable, but as it turns out, the contract is structured a little bit oddly, and a trade is possible. And the Raiders, honestly, might be best served to do this. They are clearly a ways away. They are clearly some time away from competing. Max Crosby is 28. He's the only really high value asset they can trade on that team right now. This might be the way they can speed up their rebuild a little bit. So I do want to talk about this. I didn't talk about the Myles Garrett thing because to me, that is still super unlikely. I know the contract isn't quite as prohibitive as we may have thought, but I still think the Browns are just not likely going to be willing to move Garrett given everything that it would take. But Crosby, I think this one is becoming a little bit more interesting. So I don't think I need to tell you guys how good Crosby is. 4-time Pro Bowler, gotten Defensive Player of the Year votes twice, 2022, 2023. Hasn't been quite the same player the last year and a half, but still very good. And there have been circumstances working against him. Like last year, he missed 5 games. If he didn't miss 5 games last year, he probably has double-digit sacks and everything's fine. He's missed a game this year. He's still obviously a very, very good player. And this is going to be one of the home run swings that you can take. You're going to have to really, really go for it if you want Max Crosby. You might be talking 3 first-round picks, at least 2 first-round picks, and then more stuff. You are giving up more than the Packers gave up for Micah Parsons, I believe. And you have to really, really decide, is this team ready? Is this team a Max Crosby away from winning the Super Bowl? And if you think the answer to that is yes, then you do it. But if you don't, you better not, because this is going to cost you for some time. Now, again, the contract, as it turns out, relatively trade-friendly. Raiders would eat a lot of money this year, obviously, because of the game checks they've already paid him, but that's going to him regardless. In terms of signing bonus, apparently, according to Over the Cap, it's just $5.1 million this year, $5.1 million next year. If that is the case, that is actually very reasonable. Now, you're going to inherit a massive amount of base. You're going to absorb, $18 million the rest of this season, and then look at these giant base cap hits for the next several years after this one. Now, is it possible that he wants an extension if he gets traded? I guess. I don't think so. And I guess the the nice thing about this, if you can stay on this contract, with Crosby, the nice thing is you have a lot of freedom going forward because everything is base. You can convert the base to bonus. You can push the money into void years. You can just sit on it. You can release him at almost any time past 2026. And it's not going to be a problem with your cap because he doesn't have a signing bonus here. If these numbers are correct, you're going to have a lot of freedom to do whatever you want with Crosby going forward and it not completely ruining your cap. That's a nice part of this as well. So, would you do it? I think the answer is probably yes. I would be willing to do it. I don't feel great about it. But if you truly think this team is a Max Crosby away from winning the Super Bowl, or at least getting to a Super Bowl, then I think it's worth the picks, because the picks are going to be late, right? If you could get him for like 2 first-round picks, maybe like a second-round pick, and then you throw in Boye Mafe or even Uchenna Nwosu, I think you pull the trigger. He's that good and would change your team that radically in a positive direction. So I'm open to it. I don't know if the Raiders are. To me, whether or not they trade Crosby is dependent on who is really making the decisions there. If it's Pete Carroll, no. Pete Carroll doesn't want to trade Crosby, but Spytech, maybe. One more guy on this team that I want to discuss. It's going to be Landon Roberts. Landon Roberts, former Patriot, former Dolphin, former Steeler, signed with the Raiders in the offseason. He's been good in this league for a while. He's played in hybrid defenses, so you know he can do the 3-4 and the 4-3 stuff. He's been a meaningful contributor on 2 Super Bowl winning defenses in New England. He is getting up there in age. He is going to turn 31 in the offseason. 32. He is 31 now. But this is not the kind of trade that you make because you're planning on a long-term commitment. You just need some quality depth for a little while you're trying to do whatever it is you're doing this year. By all accounts, he's still a good player, and he's not such a good player that he would show up here and demand full playing time. If he comes here and is a part-time player or even a backup, that is something that he would probably accept at this point in his career because he's not a star. And the contract is very easy. It was a 1-year, $3 million deal, approximately. Obviously, the Raiders are on the hook for the signing bonus, and they're on the hook for about half of the base. So you're only inheriting like what, $700,000. So the expenditure is not going to be big. The Raiders will be happy to just be saving a little bit of money here in all likelihood, and they're not going to ask for a lot because he's only on the 1-year deal and he's an older player. This might be one of those, you get the player, Roberts, and a 7th-round pick, and you send back a 6th type trades. And I think he would be a significant upgrade over any linebacker you could get in free agency right now, and an upgrade over anybody on the roster, assuming that Tyrese Knight doesn't come out of whatever it is that has caused him to be so much less effective this year. Now, you have to be confident that he fits your system as a will linebacker, and that's going to be in the eye of McDonald and Aiden Byrd, because we've seen that this defense with linebackers that don't fit the scheme, it's night and day. Like, we saw what happened with Dodson. We saw what happened with Jerome Baker. Yeah, Jerome Baker. So that determination will have to be made by the coaching staff. Can this guy fit in? Does this guy do what we need him to do? So I don't know about that. But this would be something very cheap that I think improves the team's depth dramatically. Would cost very little money, would cost very little draft capital. Just somebody who can come in and be a firm backup. Somebody that can push Drake Thomas a little bit. Okay, that's it. I don't think there's anything else on this Raiders team that's really worth discussing. I don't really like any of their cornerbacks for a trade. I know we're dealing with the Julian Love thing right now, but I don't maybe Jeremy Chin, but I don't know. It doesn't do much for me, right? So let me know what you guys think down below. I'll see you guys later. Go Hawks. Gonna be at least one more video later today. Maybe I'll make another one as well at some point. But that is the situation with the Raiders. And I think this is, like I said, the last team that is currently likely to be sellers at the deadline, especially if they lose this weekend. But even if they don't, I think a smart team would realize in this division we can't hold serve. All right. Everyone have a good day. Go Hawks. See you guys later.